Welcome to this explainer on transforming your standard fall yard work into a spectacular, absolutely foolproof spring garden. You know, if you want that vibrant explosion of color right as the snow melts, the actual work, well, it starts right now. Literally, as the air turns crisp.
But first, I've got to ask you something. Have you ever spent your entire autumn out there carefully planting tulips, waiting patiently all winter, only to walk out on a gorgeous spring morning and watch your hard-earned blooms literally vanish overnight into the bellies of hungry wildlife? Man, if you live in an area with a lot of deer or rabbits, you know this exact heartbreak all too well. But hey, here is the good news. You absolutely do not have to fight nature. Daffodils and hyacinths offer a completely foolproof, deer-resistant explosion of early spring beauty. By taking just a few specific, science-backed steps this fall, we can guarantee you a stunning, untouched garden next spring. Let's dive right into it.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover why you should plant these specific bulbs, how to choose high-quality stock, picking your site and prepping the soil, the perfect planting process, care and winter maintenance, and finally, what to expect with growth and blooms.
Section 1. Why plant these bulbs? The beauty and the biochemistry.
So these plants aren't just pretty faces, they actually have biological superpowers. Daffodils and hyacinths contain this incredibly bitter, toxic alkaloid called licorine, and on top of that, they're packed with calcium oxalate crystals that create a prickly, burning sensation. So even if a super hungry deer decides to take a tiny nibble, that awful taste and instant irritation makes them stop immediately. Every single part of these plants, the bulbs, the leaves, the flowers, the whole shebang, is totally off limits to deer. It really is the ultimate low-maintenance, worry-free solution for your yard.
Moving right along to Section 2, choosing high-quality bulbs, spotting the best stock.
You've absolutely got to physically inspect your bulbs. Just grabbing a bag at the nursery doesn't automatically mean they're healthy. What you want to feel for is a heavy, firm, plump bulb. You'll notice roots eventually emerging from the flat end, while the shoots are going to come from the pointed end. Now, on the flip side, if a bulb has mushy spots, if it feels oddly lightweight, or if it's shriveled up with signs of pests or rot, throw it out. Do not even compost it, because diseases can spread like wildfire. Garden space is way too valuable, so let's reserve it only for the healthiest stock.
Which brings us to Section 3. Site selection and soil prep. Laying the groundwork.
Okay, when it comes to laying the groundwork, your spot needs 6 to 8 hours of full sun, and this is absolutely crucial, excellent drainage. Bulbs hate having wet feet, and they will just rot away in waterlogged soil. Now let's talk nutrients. Do not, I repeat, do not use nitrogen fertilizers right now. Applying nitrogen in the fall can actually force the bulb to push out super vulnerable new tissue right before a hard frost. Instead, we want to focus entirely on root-building phosphorus. A lot of folks naturally reach for bone meal, but here's a pro tip for you. Only use bone meal if your soil pH is below 7.0. If it's above 7.0, the phosphorus binds to calcium and becomes completely useless to the plant. A much better, more stable alternative across the board is colloidal phosphate. Also, if you've got really sandy soil, throwing in some green sand for potassium is a great idea. Just aim to keep your overall soil pH right in that sweet spot between 6.0 and 7.0.
Section 4. The perfect planting process. Timing and technique.
Look, timing your planting isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's a strict biological requirement. Generally, you want to get these in the ground about 6 weeks before it freezes, when soil temps are hovering between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're up in the colder zones 3 to 5, you're looking at September. Zones 6 and 7, aim for October as the soil naturally cools down. But if you're down in the warmer zones 8 through 10, your winters just aren't cold enough to trigger the bulbs organically, so you actually have to pre-chill your bulbs in a refrigerator for 12 to 14 weeks, and then plant them outside in December. Kind of wild, right? Now for the golden rule of planting depth, the rule of 3. You want to plant the bulb at a depth 3 times its height, measuring from the flat base all the way up to the soil surface. For daffodils, that usually means digging down about 6 to 8 inches. Why? Because it provides a rock-solid base for their heavy flower heads and stops the bulb from heaving out of the ground during those messy winter freeze-thaw cycles. Hyacinths should sit a bit shallower, around 4 to 6 inches. But don't cheat and go too shallow, or those massive, heavy, beautifully fragrant blooms will just flop right over the second a spring breeze hits them. Let's quickly walk through the physical steps to guarantee those strong roots. Step 1. Dig your hole and use a trowel to really loosen up the soil at the very bottom. Step 2. Mix that phosphorus amendment directly into that loosened soil at the base. Don't just sprinkle it on top of the ground later, because phosphorus does not move easily through dirt. Step 3. Plop the bulb in with the pointy side facing up and the flat root side down. And step 4. Backfill with your soil, press it down gently to squeeze out any air pockets, and give the whole thing a really good deep watering to settle it in.
All right, section 5. Care and winter maintenance. The cold dormancy.
12. That is the magic number. That's the absolute minimum number of consecutive weeks of cold temperatures, specifically hanging between 35 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit, that these bulbs strictly need. This cold dormancy period, it is non-negotiable. It's when the tiny embryonic flower structure actually forms deep inside the bulb, a super cool process called flower bud differentiation. Bottom line, without this deep chill, you might get some nice green leaves next spring, but you will not get a single flower.
Now, when it comes to winter maintenance, your job is incredibly easy. You just water them deeply once, right at planting, to trigger that initial root growth and settle the soil. After that, adopt a plant and forget schedule. Just let nature take over. Unless you are having a freakishly dry autumn, do not water them again until you see those little green shoots popping up in the spring. Too much moisture with zero airflow while they're sleeping is a surefire way to kill your bulbs with rot.
And finally, Section 6, Expected Growth and Blooms. Spring Rewards.
So, fast forward a bit, and you'll start seeing shoots in early to mid-spring. When those shoots hit about 2 to 3 inches tall, that's exactly when you want to side dress them with a balanced 5-10-10 fertilizer, just at half the label rate to give them a nice little boost. But listen up, because here is the single most important aftercare rule. Never cut the green foliage immediately after the flowers finish blooming. I know it looks a bit messy, but those green leaves are literally acting like solar panels. They're soaking up the sun to create and store all the energy that bulb needs to bloom again next year. You have to let the leaves yellow and wither away naturally for about 6 to 8 weeks. Also, keep in mind that daffodils naturally multiply, so if you start noticing fewer blooms after a few years, it's an easy fix. Just dig them up after the foliage completely dies back, separate those crowded bulbs, and replant them with a bit more elbow room.
It really comes down to this, because they naturally tell wildlife to back off. They ask for almost zero maintenance, and they faithfully return year after year. These highly rewarding, perennial beauties truly are the ultimate worry-free flowers for your garden.
Just a quick heads up before we wrap things up, please remember to always adapt this advice to your local climate conditions. Your specific frost dates, your soil type, your local chill hours, they're all going to vary. So checking in with your local nursery experts is always a smart move. Well, now that you know exactly how to deer-proof your brilliant spring display, what bold colors are you planning to plant in your own garden this fall? Let that thought sit with you as you sketch out your next beautiful landscape. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and happy planting!